Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Tuesday, May the 19th. And welcome to our commentary. Well, we're getting one heck of a storm right now. This is about 3:30 Central Time. And we are getting one heck of a storm here in North Texas. I mean, it's really coming down. You can hear the rain on the roof. Remember that song by the Loving Spoonful? You and me and rain on the roof. Well, that's what I'm hearing. A lot of rain on the roof and on the windows and on the streets and on the cars. I mean, it is really coming down. And I understand some parts of North Texas are getting some hail. Not here where I am, but certainly some of the parts. So anyway, if your car is outside, keep an eye on that this afternoon. Well, I have a post over at the American Thinker today talking about the Iran nuclear deal, the one that President Obama put together, and the one that obviously President Trump was able to cancel. Now, a lot of people don't know this, so I'm just going to review a little history for you because I think it's important. When President Obama made that deal, which I think was back in 2014 or 15, he made that deal. Secretary John Kerry was Secretary of State. They made that deal. And like always happens, they took it to the Senate for ratification. That's what you do. If you're the president of the United States, you got to take it to the Senate for ratification. But the Senate never approved it, or at least he couldn't get the votes. And he couldn't get the votes because a lot of senators, some Democrats like Senator Schumer of New York, said, no way, I can't vote for this. This is not really fixing the problem. Interesting how things changed for Senator Schumer. But anyway, back in 2015, he couldn't sign on to this agreement. In fact, on my post over at the American Thinker, I have a link to the speech that he gave or the explanation that he gave. And it's funny, but that explanation by Chuck Schumer back in 2014 sounded a lot like President Trump in 2026. Amazing. But anyway, he couldn't get it out of the Senate. So it couldn't go down as a treaty, which is what the Constitution, if you want to make something binding as far as the United States is concerned, it's got to be a treaty. But it wasn't a treaty. It was just an executive agreement. So he signed an executive agreement, which means as soon as Trump came in, he could cancel it because executive agreements or executive orders can be reversed by your successor. That's how that works. So, we've been talking all this time about the Obama nuclear deal and what it did or didn't do. And, even President Obama was on TV recently in an interview with this guy from CBS. Well, that's from CBS News. He's the host of the night show, whatever the fellow's name is. It's not Jimmy Kimmel. It's the other guy who I think is going off the air this month anyway. But anyway, he was, President Obama was talking about how great his agreement was when it really wasn't. Because if that agreement had been so good, then we would have never found out that Iran was building these underground plants and underground facilities, or we would have never discovered that they had made these missiles that can travel 2,000 miles. So let's just put it this way. The agreement really didn't work. And obviously, President Obama is talking a great deal about it because this is his legacy. If you're President Obama, you're down to two things as far as your legacy. One is Obamacare, and I don't think they're talking a lot about that. And the other one is the Iran nuclear deal. And this one looks more and more like it wasn't much of anything. So here we go. Here we are. The Obama nuclear deal did not work as they thought it would. So President Trump then had to drop it, which he did. And now we are where we are, which is, President Trump said today he's holding back on the military option because apparently a couple of other countries came in and said, hey, let's keep talking. Now, I don't have a problem talking. Actually, I would rather have a settlement. I would rather have an agreement. I would rather have something in writing that makes sense for the United States, not the Obama nuclear deal, but something that really makes sense. And what I mean by that, it has to be no nuclear weapons. It has to be verified. And, Iran has to get out of the terrorism business. I mean, if we can get those three things in an agreement, I'm pretty happy with it without having to fight a war. So we will see. We will see if we can get there. Yeah, I have to trust President Trump when he says he's giving it more time. Okay, let's give him more time. As I said, I'm not really interested in fighting a war or dropping more bombs over Iran. I'm not really interested in that. But, we may come to that. And I think sometime this week, I have a feeling we're either going to drop the bombs, and that's going to be massive when we do, or we're going to come up with some kind of an agreement. And if we can come up with an agreement, as I say, an agreement is very simple. No nuclear weapons. Verification there has to be verification. And number three, Iran has to get out of the terrorism business. If you can get those three things, a lot of the other stuff I can live with, because the only thing that matters to me is that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, or that Iran doesn't have money to finance all these terrorist groups that they've been financing for a long time. So I have no idea how this is going to end up. I don't have a line to the White House. I'm going to trust President Trump at the moment because I think he's got the most information. So I'm going to trust him. I'm going to trust him that they're talking, and I'm also going to trust them they're going to make a deal. For now, I mean, it could change in the next 24 hours. But for the time being, if he says, I'm going to stop the bombing because we're talking, I'm willing to give talking a little bit more time. But we're getting very close to the point right now where we're either going to have a deal or a lot of bombs are going to drop. And I mean a lot of bombs are going to drop. And I think a lot of Iran is going to be destroyed, particularly the infrastructure and so on. So we will see. On Wednesday, we're going to be chatting with our friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda. And maybe by Wednesday afternoon, we'll have a better sense of what's going on. Bill has been following this story very closely, and I'm looking forward to what he has to say about all of this. But believe me, it's a big story, and obviously there's a political problem here. The political problem is $4 gasoline prices. I can remember 3 months ago, I was paying $2.20 here in Texas, $2.20 for gasoline. Now, $3.76 is what I saw today. Well, which is not as bad as in other states, but still, it's much higher than we were paying before. There is an interesting point, though. I heard an economist last night on the way home. He's an economist who's very familiar with the petroleum business. And he was saying that one of the things that has really kept these prices down, remember, the reason the prices are up is because 20% of the oil goes through the straits. So when you mess with 20% of anything, you're going to have an impact on prices. But he was saying that the prices have actually not gone up as much as they would have done in another time. And he credits oil production in the United States. He says that Texas, for example, Alaska, and other places that are just pumping oil are the ones who are actually keeping the price where it is right now. Instead of going up to $6 or $7, the price is more in the $4 range. And he credits our oil production for that. He thinks that it would have been a lot worse at a different time. So I got to trust the economist who's familiar with the industry when he says that. But I think that's probably true. I mean, if you really think about it, that is true, that we are pumping so much oil, which of course leads us to the next point, and that is as soon as this thing is over, you're going to have a massive drop in oil prices because there's going to be so much of it that they will definitely have to drop in a very substantial way. Well, one big story today having to do with Texas is that President Trump came out today and endorsed the Attorney General Paxton for the Senate. He's running against John Cornyn, the incumbent senator, who's seeking re-election. And this has been very much of a establishment versus MAGA campaign. I mean, MAGA, of course, being represented by the Attorney General Paxton, who, by the way, in my opinion, has done an excellent job as Attorney General. I have no beef with him on that. He's done a great job as Attorney General of Texas. And then he's running against the establishment, more conservative establishment, Senator Cornyn, who I also like. I like Senator Cornyn a lot. In fact, I voted for him. Being upfront about this, I voted for him the first time, and I voted for him just a couple of days ago in the early voting because I just feel that he's been a good senator. I also think that he appeals to, I think, a broader base than Paxton, but I could be wrong on that. So we will see. We will see what happens. You know, but the election is not until Tuesday night, next Tuesday night. So we have to wait a week or so to see what actually happens. I don't know who's going to win. People say Paxton's going to win. Obviously, the endorsement from President Trump is going to help a lot. And then what happens in the general election? If Senator Cornyn wins, then he's in very easily. Attorney General Paxton, I think he will win too, but there will be more controversy because there's just more controversy with him. And I think the Democrats will try to beef up and talk about all of his ethical mistakes and all of that. And so expect that. Expect a lot of that happening during the general election primary. But we will see on Tuesday the 26th who is actually going to win this special election here to represent Texas or to be nominated for Texas for the U.S. Senate. I have a post coming out tomorrow about climate change predictions. And if you have ever looked into this, the number of predictions that have been made about climate change has been, a lot. And the number of predictions that have come true, not too many. And really, we've reached a point right now where it's silly, the stuff that has been predicted. And I've got a long list of it that you'll be able to see in my post coming out tomorrow. But it's just crazy, all the stuff that they have been predicting that has never happened. I'm old enough to remember when Newsweek magazine had a front cover. I think that was back in the 1980s. They had a front cover about how we were all going to freeze to death. It was going to be like an ice age. And then I guess a few years later, we're going to melt to death because we were all going to melt, all the sun. So I think the way this information has been distributed has not been good for the climate change people. I like a clean environment as much as anybody. I like clean air, clean water as much as anybody. But I don't think you want to deindustrialize the United States or send all your jobs to China, manufacturing jobs, that is. And you don't want to destroy our machinery or destroy our oil business just because, the green people tell you so. I mean, oil is going to be with us for a long time. And it's still going to be the primary source of getting around. You're going to put gasoline in your car one way or the other. And even if you buy an electric car, that electricity comes from a power plant, which is more than likely running on some type of diesel fuel. So anyway, check out my post. It'll be out tomorrow morning, and it'll have a long list of all the predictions that have gone wrong. All of the predictions that have gone wrong. Well, on this day in history, a quick birthday, happy number 81, to Peter Townsend. Now, if you're familiar with The Who, the rock band, The Who, great band, great sound. They had some I guess they're still recording, The Who. They had some great songs, and Peter Townsend was the guitar player. I guess there's two songs by The Who that I really like. One is called Happy Jack, which I believe was their first hit in the United States. And the other one was Pinball Wizard. And that's a great guitar solo there by Peter Townsend. So happy number 81 to Peter Townsend of The Who. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and the rain is coming. And we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.